The Forsaken Heir. Previous episodes are available on the playlist. You can also visit our website for your favorite stories. A link is provided in the video description. Episode 69. Hearing the last question of the eldest brother, he subconsciously said, "I remember him, he was the Wade family's best." Speaking of this, his whole body was instantly shocked, his eyes widened to the extreme, staring at Charlie forever. At this moment, two figures that would have been 20 years apart overlapped in his mind. Only then did he realize that the vigorous young man in front of him looked so much like that vigorous young man back then. Reminiscent of Mr. Wade, and his relationship with his elder brother so close, he immediately seemed to be struck by thunder, trembling and pointing at Charlie, and asked Philip in a trembling voice, "Big brother, is he the son of brother Changing, the second master of the Wade family?" The second master of the Wade family, he was talking about Charlie's father, Changing. The word Changing is taken from the classic poem of a great man, "Today Changing is in hand, when will the dragon be bound?" And Changing's implication is, Wade family has a son, Kintai the beast named Kang Long. And he was the second child of the Wade family heirs. Although he was not the eldest son, his ability was the strongest of the Wade family. At a young age, he could plan tactics and win 1,000 miles in the market. Under his leadership, the Wade family had even fought back and forth with the Rothschild family in Europe and the United States, which has a history of hundreds of years, and even made the other party suffer a compromise in the end. In those days, countless rich second generations of East Cliff regarded him as their idol in life. Countless rich generations looked at him with grief and sighed like Changing had a child. Countless wealthy daughters admired him so much that they regarded him as the best candidate for the wishful man. When you marry Changing, this is the most familiar sentence in the circle of East Cliff celebrities. I think back then, there were all good women seeking great families, but who has ever seen the grand occasion of good men seeking great families? Back then, the big business figures who came to Wade's house and hoped to marry their daughter to Changing are too numerous to count. Yan Zhen couldn't help thinking back then, that Changing used the light of one person to cover the edge of all East Cliff's peers. At that time, everyone was sighing in their hearts, why were they born in the same era as Changing? Changing was like a bright moon in the night sky, who can compete with him? Thinking of this, Yan Zhen can already conclude that Charlie is Changing's son. He thought of Changing's heroic posture, and his heart was immediately panicked. Looking at Charlie, he suddenly knelt on one knee and blurted with all his face, "Master, please forgive me for being clumsy. I didn't realize that you are actually the son of brother Changing." Although Yang Gong hadn't spoken for a while, seeing his second brother kneeling on one knee, he immediately followed him and knelt down on one knee. Both Waliang and Wei Guang were blinded. They were young and didn't know Changing's glorious deeds back then. Seeing that their father actually kneeled for Charlie, they were stunned. Wei Guang immediately wanted to protest loudly, but was grabbed by Waliang, who had a higher vision, and covered his mouth. This is, Yan Zhen, who knelt on one knee, actually choked up and sighed, "When I was young, I secretly made a dream in my heart and bowed my head to worship Changing. It's a pity that brother died young, so I never had the opportunity to learn a thing or two by his side. If I had the opportunity to learn a little by his side, I wouldn't be so dull today." The mention of Changying's name still makes many middle-aged people in the East Cliff family sigh. Because for these big families, no wealth is as important as a powerful offspring who can go straight ahead. Business world is like battlefields. Sometimes a slight deviation may lead to the annihilation and the destruction of the entire army. This is why many families have ups and downs in the game, and many even directly launched the stage of history. If a family wants to be prosperous, it doesn't matter how much money is in their hands, or how much land is in their hands, it doesn't matter how much land is in their hands. What matters is whether his descendants can continue to produce dragons and phoenixes. The prosperity of the Wade family today is inseparable from the solid foundation that Changying laid 20 years ago. That's why people remember Changying and regard him as a bright moon in their hearts. Charlie didn't expect that brothers Yanzhen and Yanggong would kneel on one knee when they heard his father's name. Seeing that the two people's respectful expression was not hypocritical, the anger towards the two of them was slightly relieved. It took a few minutes. At this moment, Yanzhen turned his head and looked at his son Waliang and the third son Weiguang, and blurted out, "You two, seeing the blood of brother Changying, don't hesitate to kneel down and admit your mistakes." Waliang understood in his heart. Although he hadn't heard too many rumors about Changying, he guessed that Charlie was a descendant of the Wade family of East Cliff. Don't care about the Gu family and the Wade family belonging to one of the three major East Cliff families, but the weaker ones are not even a little bit. Some people joked that the so-called three major East Cliff families are actually nothing more than two dragons playing beads. The dragons refers to the Wade family and the Sui family. As for the Gu family, it's just the bead. The Wade family's strength is much stronger than that of the Gu family. Even if the brothers Philip, Yanzhen, and Yanggong are tied together, in front of the Wade family, they are not enough. What's more, Philip, the boss of the Gu family, stood with Charlie at this time. It is equivalent to the fact that the brothers Yanzhen and Yanggong are not only facing the Wade family, but more than half of the Gu family. After all, Philip, the current eldest brother, seems to have recovered. He really needs to break his wrists. The second and third can't even break off the eldest son. Why are they talking about the Wade family? Therefore, Waliang did not dare to delay. He came to his father Yanzhen in 3 or 2 steps. He knelt on one knee and said devoutly, "Mr. Charlie, please forgive me for being clumsy, I didn't know your excellency." Weiguang's brain is not as good as Waliang's, but seeing that, he didn't dare to ask more. He came forward and knelt on the ground, learning from his cousin in a decent way, and respectfully said, "Mr. Charlie, please forgive me for being clumsy." Charlie nodded slightly, and said coldly, "For your respect for my father, you just insulted me. I won't pursue it for the time being." The 4 of them breathed a sigh of relief at the same time. But Charlie immediately said, "However, your 2 brothers were embarrassing, trying to seize the assets of my uncle, and also released news that uncle was seriously ill, and many directors wanted to usurp power on the board of directors. You must give uncle a clear solution, otherwise, I will not let you go." Yanzhen knew in his heart that this power-seeking plan had completely failed. Not only can they not beat eldest brother now, but they are also distracted from the board of directors. Relying on himself and my third brother, he wants to continue to fight against eldest brother. It is simply a dream. The best solution is to immediately recognize the council and strive to return to the previous state. So, he immediately looked at Philip and said sincerely, "Brother, this matter is my passion. I confessed my mistakes and punished. From today onwards, we will completely eliminate all attempts to refrain from returning, and wholeheartedly assist you in running the Gu group." The third, Yang Gong, also quickly admitted his mistake. "Big brother, just like the second brother, I apologize to you. If you have any instructions in the future, I will definitely take the lead and dare not follow." A trace of melancholy and hesitation flashed across Philip's expression. In fact, he did not expect that the second and third would give up resistance so quickly. Originally thought they would resist stubbornly, but what he didn't expect was that Charlie and his father Changjing's identity completely frightened them. Therefore, a complete victory was achieved at once, and both of the younger brothers confessed their mistakes with great concentration, and he did not think about how to deal with them. At this time, Charlie said, "Since you want to admit your mistakes, you must at least express it. Although I am an outsider, I also make a little suggestion here. Please listen and see if it is feasible." Philip hurriedly said, "Charlie, you say." Charlie smiled and said, "Uncle, these 4 people are all blood relatives of your same clan. In my opinion, knowing your mistakes can make corrections." When Yan Zhen and Yang Gong heard this, they were happy and hurriedly nodded in agreement. "Yes, big brother, we are all brothers. For the sake of blood relationship and our sincere regret, forgive us this time." Charlie said again at this time, "Don't worry, you can be forgiven, but forgiveness is also conditional." Yan Zhen of course knew that Charlie could not be so good, and took the initiative to intercede for them. There must be other conditions in exchange for them, so he immediately clasped his fists and said, "Master, please say." Charlie said indifferently, "You are both shareholders of the Gu Group, and you have shares in the Gu Group. Since you want to follow Uncle with all your heart, you must be bound firmly with him, so my suggestion, you two, immediately transfer the voting rights corresponding to all the shares in your hands to Uncle forever." What Charlie wanted was the voting rights corresponding to their shares, but not their shares. In other words, how much should they hold, how much should they not hold, how much should they earn, and how much money should they not earn, but after the voting rights of the shares are handed over, they have no right to speak in this board of directors, and everything must be ordered by the controlling party's decision-making. In this way, Philip's voting rights have reached the 51% absolute control requirement. In the future, he will be one of the best in the Gu Group. Even if all the remaining shareholders unite, they will only have 49% of the voice at most, so it is impossible to shake Philip's control. When Philip heard this, his heart was clear. Unexpectedly, Charlie not only saved his life, but also wanted to help him regain control of the Gu Group. This kid acts cleanly and decisively. He really has the shadow of his father back then. Thinking of this, Philip sighed besides being grateful, sighing his big brother. Charlie had been in Oris Hill for many years. He hadn't received a good education or experienced good conditions. He struggled to get up from the grassroots mud pit by himself, but he did not expect that he was already quite a general. If the eldest brother was still alive these years, and if Charlie can be carefully nurtured under the hands of his father Changjing, then Charlie is afraid that it has become a shining existence in the world. Unfortunately, this beautiful vision can only be exchanged with a sigh. However, the more he looked at Charlie, the more pleasing he felt. If he can become his son-in-law in the future, he will be able to give his daughter a lifetime of happiness, and he and his wife can be completely relieved. At this moment, Yan Zhen felt a pain in his heart. Charlie's words made him realize that this is helping the eldest brother and disarming him. In a company, it doesn't matter how many employees or departments you have under your hands. What is important is how much power you have in the company. The voting rights corresponding to the shares are tantamount to the company's internal struggle for power and profit. If I let myself surrender all voting rights now, it would be tantamount to letting myself surrender all weapons and completely give up the possibility of resistance. To be honest, he didn't want to be so controlled by others. However, thinking about it the other way round, he has nothing to do. Disagree? There is no way to disagree. After all, the eldest brother is recovering now, and Charlie is supporting him, so he is not an opponent. Now he is still playing a criminal plot with himself, actually letting himself surrender the gun and not kill. If he doesn't agree, then they may change their routine to play the conspiracy. At that time, they will not surrender the gun but never kill the endless trouble. Thinking of this, he sighed softly and said, "Master, I agree to your proposal and hand over all voting rights." Yang Gong has been waiting for the second brother to express his opinion. He has a weak personality and has no opinion. Anyway, he and the second brother have tossed this matter together, so naturally he has to follow the second brother to advance and retreat. So he hurriedly said, "Master, I have no objection." Charlie nodded with satisfaction, and said to Philip, "Uncle, in this case, let the legal affairs come over and draw up the voting rights transfer agreement. After signing the agreement, you can just go to the press conference to hold a press conference in the release hall and put this matter public." After speaking, Charlie checked the time and said, "It's 10 o'clock now. If you move fast, hold a press conference before 11:30. That morning, before the stock market is closed, the GU Group's stock price should respond and turn positive by the end of the business day." "Yes." Philip nodded loyally, and immediately said, "Just do what you said, Charlie." After speaking, he immediately took out his mobile phone and called his assistant, "Call all the legal department immediately." Yan Zhen gave up resistance and felt relieved. Then, he thought about the inexplicable loss of fertility between himself and his younger brother, son, and nephew. He hurriedly pleaded, "Master, the four of us suddenly lost that. In terms of ability, to be honest, the Gu family's blood is all in us and nephews, so please raise your hands high." Philip was a little surprised and didn't understand what it meant when Yan Zhen said that the four people lost that ability. At this time, Yang Gong, Wu Liang, and Wei Guang all looked at Charlie with pleading eyes, hoping that he could restore the ability for everyone. Charlie said indifferently at this time, "First of all, I must tell you clearly that this matter is reversible to me. If I am in a good mood, I can restore all four of you to the original." When the four of them heard this, they were immediately overjoyed. What everyone fears most is that all this is irreversible. In case it is really irreversible, then all is over. Even if he compromises, concedes defeat, and surrenders the right to vote, he still can't enjoy the pleasure of a relationship. But Charlie's reversible sentence immediately ignited hope in their hearts. However, Charlie changed his words and said lightly, although it is reversible, when it is reversible, it depends on your performance and my personal mood. If you perform well and satisfy me, I will consider it. The faces of Yan Zhen and others suddenly turned into 4 bitter gourds. Can't recover temporarily? So everyone can only continue to live this life as a living eunuch? When is the leader in such days? However, since Charlie had already said so, everyone really didn't dare to disobey him. Otherwise, if he is unhappy and just doesn't recover, wouldn't it be the end of the whole life? Therefore, Yan Zhen could only respectfully say, "Please rest assured, Mr. Charlie, I will do well and I will wait." Charlie nodded lightly, and said lightly, "Get up, and the legal affairs will come in for a while and see this scene, it must be quite strange." When the 4 heard this, they stood up. Later, Charlie said coldly, "My identity, before I take the initiative to disclose it to the outside world, the 4 of you are absolutely not allowed to say a word to the outside world, otherwise, I will definitely not spare you." Yan Zhen knew that he couldn't afford to provoke Charlie. Not only he is Wade family's young master but also his eldest brother supported him. More importantly, the lifelines of the 4 were completely controlled by him, even if he killed himself. He never dared to offend him. Therefore, he agreed without hesitation and said, "Master, don't worry, we will never reveal a word about you." The other 3 people also nodded in a humble manner. Seeing their sincere attitude, Charlie nodded slightly and said to Philip, "Uncle, I will be in audience below at the press conference, so I won't show up in front of the media." Philip nodded and said, "Okay Charlie, I'll let the secretary arrange a seat for you in a moment." Soon, more than a dozen people came up from the legal department of the GU Group. These dozens of people are all top domestic lawyers and legal workers. They use their professional abilities to protect the legal rights of the entire GU Group. They are all elites. The agreement for the permanent transfer of voting rights is very simple and clear in itself, and there are no twists and turns, so they quickly drafted a contract with no flaws. Once the contract is signed, it means that Yan Zhen and Yang Gong will permanently transfer 100% of the voting rights corresponding to their shares to their eldest brother Philip for free. Even if they died and the heirs of their shares must continue to recognize this agreement. Even if Philip dies, his heirs will naturally inherit all the voting rights corresponding to the shares of Yan Zhen and Yang Gong. In other words, even if the GU family's 3 brothers passed away decades later and their shares were inherited by their own children, Sarah could still control the GU family group completely, not afraid that the 2nd and 3rd wanted to seek power. The 2 did not have any tempers at this time, and obediently signed their names on the agreement. Each agreement is in 5 copies, one of which is kept by Philip, and the other by Yan Zhen or Yang Gong. There are 3 remaining copies, one for the legal department, one for the notary department for filing and custody, and one for the bank safe. In this way, the possibility of someone trying to destroy all contracts is avoided. When the contract was signed, the 2nd and 3rd of the GU family officially and permanently gave up resistance. In the future, they can only honestly follow Philip to make money and take dividends. If Philip does not let them speak, they will not even have the right to speak on the board of directors. After the contract was signed, Philip stood up and said, "Come, let's go to the conference hall. Friends from the media and reporters who came here early in the morning shouldn't wait a long time." When he heard that he was going to the conference hall, Yan Zhen blushed. Most of the reporters who are waiting in the conference hall came here early in the morning because they said they were going to meet a board of directors today, and they used the media to release news that their eldest brother was critically ill. They want to catch a big news about the replacement of the chairman of the Gu Group, so that Yan Zhen can also use the current media attention to beat his reputation. Yan Zhen originally wanted them to report on his victory on the board of directors, so that afternoon, the media could announce to the public that the chairman of the Gu Group had changed his position and he would become the next chairman. Unexpectedly, all these things he did would eventually fulfill eldest brother. He could even think that once the big brother appeared at the press conference with a red face, all the media reporters who thought he was going to die would have to fry them on the spot. After he announced that he had obtained 51% of the voting rights, the media reporters should be shocked to add nothing to it. With this thought flying in his mind, he secretly sighed. Maybe, this is his fate. Originally, his abilities and wrists were inferior to that of the older brother. He wanted to take advantage of the vacancy, but he didn't expect that there would be a Wade family young master beside him. What's even more amazing was that brother recovered from the serious illness overnight. It seems that the only thing that suits him is to follow him as a foil. In fact, Philip is a smart man. He considered many things very comprehensively, and he was only shivering from success. It's a pity that in the end he still encountered Charlie stirring the situation behind his back. Without Charlie, Philip would strategize again, dragging a dying body, and it would be impossible to fight the union between him and Yang Gong, and even the safety of his wife and daughter would not be guaranteed in the future. However, Yan Zhen was able to see the situation in time and immediately gave up the original overall plan to stop the loss, and he can also see that this person is at least number one. Change to the kind of person who can't see the situation clearly and is still stubbornly resisting when he dies, and he will soon be completely cold. Philip was grateful to Charlie at this time. The appearance of Charlie not only saved his own life, but also saved his wife and daughter, and his career. This kindness, in his opinion, is afraid that it will be a life of poverty, and he can't repay it all. He can only do his best for the rest of his life. So he took Charlie's hand and whispered to him, "Charlie, if you don't want to return to Wade's house in the future, come to the Gu Group. Uncle will arrange for you a position of vice chairman. I only have a daughter. With my daughter, everything in the future will be yours." What Philip said was not courtesy, but from the heart. He felt that his daughter was going to marry Charlie, and Charlie was his son-in-law. If he did not return to Wade's house, Gu's family would belong to him in the future. Although he is open-minded, he also feels that if his daughter marries Charlie, she should be a good helper. Charlie and his father, Changjing, are both his benefactors. As long as Charlie can give his daughter a lifetime of happiness, he is willing to give all his assets as a dowry for his daughter. Charlie naturally knew what he meant. He really regarded himself as the future son-in-law, even half of his son. But he couldn't deal with this kind of thing, so he said seriously, "Uncle, I have no plans to return to Eastcliff. You still allow me to consider this matter?" Philip also didn't insist, nodded, and said, "In short, you should see your uncle at any time and under any circumstances. My home is your home." Charlie nodded solemnly. Because he wanted to attend the conference, and Charlie didn't want to appear on the scene, he sat in the auditorium of the conference as an ordinary guest in advance under the arrangement of Secretary of Philip. All the cameras are aimed at the rostrum of the press conference, so he doesn't have to worry about being on TV. When Charlie sat down in the auditorium, the entire conference hall was already overcrowded. The major media have sent reporters one after another, with long guns and short cannons here, waiting for the GU group to release important news. At this moment, the outside world does not know the news of Philip's recovery. Everyone thought that Philip was already dying and that he might not be able to join the board of directors today. However, they expect Philip to appear. Because, as media people, they like to catch some topics that can arouse attention. So they hope that they can capture the image of Philip's late hero and add some sensational text at that time. This is a proper headline news. Some people have even thought about the headline of the news. For example, "The end of an era," or "The legend is old, can the new chairman of the GU group turn the tide?" Now they are only waiting for Philip, who is dyingly ill, to stagger in from the conference hall, even being pushed in a wheelchair. At this moment, the on-site staff picked up the microphone and said, "Please be quiet, everyone present, our chairman will be here soon." As soon as this word came out, everyone turned their attention to the entrance of the venue. The cameras have already found the angle, and put the entire entrance into the viewfinder frame. Everyone was waiting for the moment the door opened and Philip showed up. At this moment, the door was pushed open from the outside in. The first step forward was Philip's secretary. The second step forward was Yang Gong. The third one is Yanzhen. The moment they saw Yanzhen, the shutter sound on the scene had begun to intensively shriek. Because everyone knows that he is the second child of the GU family, and is also the chairman of the GU group, and he is the unyielding successor. Philip is critically ill. He is the new chairman of a trillion-business empire from GU. However, no one thought that behind Yanzhen, they did not see Philip's shadow, but saw a middle-aged man who was nearly 10 years younger than Yanzhen, with a red face, tall and strong. The media present could not help but exclaim, "Who is this person? Why haven't I seen him before?" No wonder they couldn't help Philip all of a sudden. In recent years, Philip's image in front of the media has grown older. Moreover, after Philip became seriously ill, some media secretly took pictures of him in overseas hospitals. He was indeed very haggard. At the age of 50, he seemed to be at least 60. Therefore, when they suddenly saw Philip, who looked like 40 years old, no one could adapt to this violent contrast. Moreover, the media reporters were not relatives around him and couldn't recognize him at once. It was normal. When Philip walked in, some of the media reporters exclaimed, "There he comes. The last one is Philip, Chairman GU." After he exclaimed, someone immediately questioned, "Philip was almost dead, wasn't he? The last person looks like he's 40 years old. Can he be like this?" The reporter resolutely said, "10 years ago, I interviewed Chairman GU, and he was what he is now. His appearance, demeanor, and posture are all right in memory." When the reporters heard this, everyone went to seriously look at Philip now. A closer look reveals that Philip's previous shadow can indeed be seen, and that the five senses and temperament belong to the same person. So everyone can be sure that this man in his 40s is Philip. Now, the whole scene was in an uproar. No one can understand why Philip, who said in the headlines this morning that he is critically ill, is so energetic and radiant now. Therefore, every photojournalist locked his lens firmly on Philip, and the shutter sound made a sound. At this time, the network media directly broadcast the conference live simultaneously on the internet through on-site equipment. When the vast number of netizens saw Philip's red face, the stocks of many listed companies in the GU group that had already dropped their limit, immediately loosened. The so-called limit is a situation in which the stock price drops to 10% and it is not allowed to continue to fall, resulting in a large number of selling orders blocking the lowest price and the stock price unable to rise. In fact, in this case, if someone eats all the sell orders at the limit price, the stock will automatically open the limit. The most sensitive in the stock market are brokers and institutions. When they discovered that Philip turned out to look like a okay person, they immediately realized that the news this morning must be fake news. Therefore, in this case, they fully believe that the GU group's share price will rise immediately. At this time, if the selling order is eaten up at the limit price, you can buy the bottom at the lowest price. If the stock can rise against the trend in the future, from the lower limit all the way up to the daily limit, then the institution that buys the bottom will be able to seize the 20% rise in one day. For example, the stock price was originally 100, but ended up at 90. At this time, 10,000 people put their sell orders at 90. If someone puts these 10,000 people on a 90 stock, buy it all, and the stock price will begin to open the limit. If you buy the bottom from the price of 90, the stock price rises back to 100, and then continues to rise to the 110 daily limits. It is equivalent to a short period of time, from 90 to 110. A large number of institutions are frantically accumulating funds, and the stock price has risen all the way after opening the down limit. At this time, Philip came to the front of the seat, stood in place and waved to the reporter, then walked up to the stage and sat in the middle of the rostrum. In front of him, a microphone and his name tag were placed with words, "Chairman, Philip GU." After sitting down, Philip smiled into the microphone and said forcefully, "First of all, on behalf of the GU Group and the GU Group's Board of Directors, I would like to thank all friends from the media for participating in this press conference in their busy schedule." A group of GU Group shareholders followed him to applaud. Afterwards, Philip said, "Next, I will give some simple and concise answers to some of the questions that your media friends, stockholders, and investors are concerned about." Everyone didn't expect that Philip would go straight to the topic after making a polite sentence, and they couldn't help but sit up straight, listening with respect. Philip cleared his throat and said in a loud voice, "The first problem is my personal health. I did have some problems with my body before, but now my body has fully recovered." As soon as this was said, everyone on the scene couldn't help but gasp. Everyone knows that Philip has pancreatic cancer, and it is at terminal stage. This disease is known as the cancer with the highest mortality rate, and it is impossible to cure it. Now, Philip said that he has fully recovered, which has completely subverted everyone's understanding of the disease. However, looking after Philip's radiant face does not seem to be terminally ill. Is there really any medical miracle that can't be achieved? At this moment, Philip continued, the second question, if you don't believe that my body has fully recovered, then after the press conference, I will go to Fairview for a full-body CT scan, and the result of the scans, I would like to announce it to all media and the general public. With Philip's words, everyone is not suspicious of his condition. Because a whole-body CT scan can find any kind of tumor, even very early-stage carcinoma in situ, it can be found well. If Philip did not recover, he would definitely not dare to accept such an examination. Everyone couldn't help but marvel. They didn't expect that even pancreatic cancer, a super-terminal illness, could be born with such a miracle, which reminds people of the genius Jobs who died young a few years ago. It's the same disease, why didn't Jobs have such luck? If Jobs was still alive, maybe he could bring more innovation and change to mankind. Then, Philip said, the third question, I think everyone is very concerned about the arrangement of the chairman of the GU Group. I now officially announce that between me, and the other two shareholders of the GU Group, Yan Zhen and Yang Gong, a few minutes ago, a voting rights transfer agreement was signed. Shareholders Yan Zhen and Yang Gong have permanently transferred all the voting rights corresponding to their personal shares to me. When everyone heard this, they were even more stunned. They had already inquired about the discord between the GU family brothers from everywhere. They know that Yan Zhen and Yang Gong have been forming an alliance to deal with their elder brother, and they are also uniting with other shareholders to deal with their elder brother. Everyone was still waiting to see a big family fight, but they didn't expect the three brothers to reach such a brotherly agreement. Yan Zhen and Yang Gong permanently transfer their voting rights to their eldest brother Philip. Doesn't this mean that they will always obey Philip? What about the brothers competing? What about the good legacy war? The reporters present all felt extremely depressed. It's like everyone has bought melon seeds and drinks, sitting in front of the TV and preparing to watch a Gongdu opera. As a result, after turning on the TV, they found that all the empresses, concubines, and nobles in the harem were all clustered around the queen. Everyone had one mind with the queen. Everything was seen by the queen, and the whole harem was in harmony. How can there be any fights? What's the life and death? How can there be any murder? As the party concerned, it is naturally the most cost-effective solution to make concerted efforts and turn fighting into jade. But as an audience, this kind of scene is boring to the extreme. It can even be said to be very disappointing. Philip glanced over the eyes and expressions of all reporters. He smiled lightly and said into the microphone, from today onwards, the three GU family brothers of the GU family will work together to bring the GU family into a new glory. As the so-called brothers work together, and their profit cuts gold, we also believe that with our joint efforts, the GU Group will surely return all stockholders and investors with better performance and higher market value. After he finished speaking, he joked and talks a little bit, however, please allow me to say sorry to everyone here. You're disappointed for not letting you see a big family fight. As soon as these words came out, the reporters on the scene blushed, but at this moment the share prices of all listed companies under the GU Group began to soar like a dragon. Almost immediately after Philip's domineering remarks, the stock price, which was steadily rising shortly after opening the limit, suddenly seemed to be sitting on a rocket, and directly rushed to the limit with a sound. A large number of institutions and a large number of retail investors are watching the press conference. Seeing this, they immediately have full confidence in the GU Group and are optimistic about it, even far higher than before Philip was sick. Therefore, everyone started desperately buying all the stocks of GU's group-related listed companies that were available on the market, and immediately pulled the price to the daily limit. In the blink of an eye, the stock price reversed and detonated the entire financial circle. The reason why everyone is so optimistic about the GU Group is not only because Philip looks extremely healthy, but also because Philip's voting rights in the GU Group have reached 51%. Before that, the three GU brothers jointly held 51% of the shares and voting rights. Although Philip alone owns half of it, he wants to implement a decision on the board of directors. He must also get votes of the other two brothers, or let others. Some minority shareholders who together exceed the shareholding ratio of Yan Zhen and Philip voted in favor. Now, no more. He has fully achieved the goal of one person speaking and one person being master. From now on, his control of the GU Group will rise to an unprecedented new height. This has strengthened the confidence of the market and investors in Philip. If you have confidence in him, you naturally have confidence in the GU Group. Once you have confidence in the company, you will have confidence in holding the company's stock. As a result, the stock price skyrocketed. Philip did not talk to reporters too much at the scene. After explaining a few questions he wanted to say, he said, "In the future, the GU Group will redouble its efforts to repay investors and shareholders for the GU Group. Trust, and please trust us, we will definitely give you a satisfactory answer." After that, Philip said again, "Today's press conference ends here, thank you for coming." A reporter hurriedly stood up and asked loudly, "Chairman GU, can you accept a simple interview?" Philip waved his hand, "There is no need for the interview. I just want to say so much. I have said too much, but it will affect everyone's reception of this important information." After he finished speaking, Charlie, who was under his stand, winked quietly and walked out of the venue. The reporter also wanted to catch up for an interview, but the security personnel at the scene immediately stopped all the reporters and said politely, "Excuse me, the chairman does not accept additional interviews." Charlie stood up. Philip's secretary had already arrived, and said respectfully, "Mr. Wade, the chairman said that the media has paid more attention. Let me take you through other exits." Charlie nodded, followed the secretary for a few steps, and came to Philip's office. Philip was in red at this time. Seeing Charlie coming in, he immediately stepped forward, patted his arm, and said excitedly, "Charlie, you make me feel a new life." Charlie smiled, "Uncle, didn't I give you the medicine yesterday?" Philip shook his head, "It's not the same. I'm talking about a new life. It's in career. Starting today, the GU Group can finally save a lot of internal friction and move forward." Speaking of this, Philip sighed, "You don't know how it feels if you concentrate on doing things and the person next to you does everything possible to hold you back. It's as if you want to lead everyone forward, and the people around you not only don't follow you, but also pull your sleeves, hug your thighs, and even block you in front and dig holes for you. It's fine now I say to run, they must all run, not to run, they must run for me with a whip." Charlie nodded and said with a smile, then I will congratulate Uncle in advance, and hope you to take the Gu family to the next level." Philip looked at Charlie and said seriously, "Charlie, I hope that one day, you will lead the Wade family to the next level with the Gu family. At that time, you will be the most powerful person in the business world." In Philip's eyes, the Wade family and the Sua family were two dragons competing. The difference in strength between the two is not too great, but the Sua family still beats the Wade family. In fact, in the early years, the strength of the two companies can be said to be almost the same. Had it not been for Changjing's untimely death at a young age, the Wade family might have already surpassed the Sua family under his leadership. But it was precisely because of the fall of Changjing's genius that the Wade family had no successors, so that the Sua family gradually opened up a bit of status. However, Philip believed that if Charlie came to inherit the Wade family and then married his daughter, Charlie would have both Wade and Gu in his hands by that time. Even in the future, the two can be deeply merged together. In that way, Charlie would be able to beat the dust in the entire business community. However, he didn't know when Charlie could deal with all the matters of Oris Hill, and then he returned to East Cliff to marry his daughter. However, Philip did not mention this matter, let alone urge him, but took a deep look at him, then patted him on the shoulder, and said seriously, after leaving, "Let's go see your parents." Charlie nodded gently and said, "Uncle, I want to buy them 2 bunches of flowers. Is there a flower shop nearby?" "You don't need to buy it," Philip said, "after we go out, your Aunt Lennon has started to prepare. Now they are all ready. Let's go home directly, and after meeting with them, we will go to Waderest Mountain together." Charlie said gratefully, "It's really hard work for Aunt Lennon. These things should have been handled by me." Philip waved his hand, "Lennon, you mother had the same relationship as sisters, and your father and I had the same brotherhood, and we have always regarded you as our own. Therefore, our 2 families are originally one family, and it is the same who manages them." Philip's motorcade drove out of the Gu group neatly. The convoy returned to Gu's villa first, and the driver at home drove a black Rolls-Royce out again. Lennon and Sarah were sitting in this car. Although the Rolls-Royce looked very large, it only had 2 seats in the back row, so the 4 people were divided into 2 cars, and under the escort of bodyguards, they quickly drove out of the city to the western suburbs of East Cliff. East Cliff is surrounded by mountains on 3 sides and is full of endless Yunshan mountains. Yunshan is steep, easy to defend and difficult to attack. From this point, the Great Wall of China began to extend in both directions, east to Shanhaiguan, and west to Jiaiguan. Waderest Mountain is an ingot-shaped green hill in the Yunshan Mountains. This place was originally deep in the mountains, with no people or roads. After the Wade family chose to build the ancestral tomb here, they built a road leading to the foot of the mountain and built a winding road to the mountainside. The investment was huge. In the past, this mountain and this road were closed. Because the property rights were bought and the road was invested independently, other social vehicles and people were not allowed to enter. Philip's motorcade could enter. This was because they had followed Wade in advance. Because the family said hello. At this moment, Charlie was sitting in the Rolls-Royce, getting closer and closer to Waderest Mountain. In 10 minutes, he will be able to see his parents who have been separated for nearly 18 years from him. Even though Yin and Yang are separated, he still can't restrain the tension in his heart. He looked at the mountain, and said silently in his heart, "Parents, your son has finally come to see you." Waiterest Mountain. This mountain, which can be called a treasure of feng shui, is not only better than ingots in shape, but also better. It is surrounded by a continuous river with excellent water outlets. The ancients loved mountains and water. Water not only cleans everything, it is also the source of life. Therefore, water must be indispensable for the so-called feng shui treasure. The water of Waiterest Mountain is indeed beautiful from heaven. Not only does the heavenly gate open and the land is closed, but it also perfectly matches the trend of the fortune to the river and the position and orientation of the mountain itself, forming a water bureau's long feng shui array. Such a feng shui formation can guarantee the prosperity of the family and the prosperous future generations, and more importantly, it can break the situation of the dragon shoal before the Wade family. Charlie has a deep knowledge of feng shui mystery because he has studied the 9 profound sky classics. Although he didn't know why the old feng shui said that Waiterest was trapped in the shoal, he could perceive that the ancestral grave of Waiterest Mountain not only blessed the descendants and prospered family business, but also faintly soared into the sky. This made him amazed. The Wade family really had a lot of money. Not only could they buy such a feng shui place, but they could also invest so much money to make a big investment here. The geomantic omen here is very good, and if the descendants are a little bit more vigorous, the Wade family will definitely continue to prosper. When approaching the foot of Waiterest Mountain, Philip reminded Charlie, "Charlie, I will ask the driver to pull over and you can drive." Charlie didn't want to be exposed in front of the Wade family for the time being, so yesterday he had already agreed with Philip, acting as a driver and assistant and going with him to worship his parents. So he nodded and said, "Okay, Uncle, I'll drive." The driver pulled the car over, handed the sunglasses to Charlie, and said, "Mr. Charlie, here, this is for you." Charlie took the sunglasses and put them on, took out a disposable mask from his pocket, and then sat in the cab. The driver did not stay in this car, but went to one of the other vehicles behind. Charlie drove on and continued forward. When he reached the bottom of Waiterest Mountain, a mighty white marble gate tower stood in front of him, and under the gate tower, the electric gate was closed tightly, and several security personnel stood on both sides as if standing guard. The leading car stopped in front of the gate, and then the convoy stopped one after another. A security guard walked up to Philip's car from the front. Philip put down half of the window. The other side respectfully said, "Mr. Gu, please ask the driver to park the car in the parking lot nearby. There are too many cars for fear of disturbing the ancestors of the Wade family. You can go in the car with your wife and young lady." Philip nodded and said to the assistant on the co-pilot, "Go and coordinate and let them wait in the parking lot." The assistant hurriedly asked, "Chairman, what about your safety issues?" Philip said earnestly, "This is the site of the Wade family, and there is absolutely no problem of safety issues." The security guard outside the car bowed respectfully, "Thank you Mr. Gu for your affirmation." Afterwards, while the assistant pushed the door to get out of the car, he opened his mouth and said to Charlie sitting in the cab, "Mr. Driver, after going into the mountain, please don't honk the whistle or accelerate quickly, and keep the engine speed as low as possible. Below 2,500 revolutions, so as not to make too much movement and disturb the ambience. Charlie nodded. Naturally, the mausoleum should be as quiet as possible. Not only can he not honk the horn, nor make noise. Moreover, the sound of a car engine is the greater the speed, the greater the noise. Whether it is an ordinary family car or a luxury car, when the engine speed is below 2500 rpm, it will not make much movement, but if the speed is increased to 3 or 4000, or even 4 or 5000, the noise will immediately increase several times. Therefore, as a driver, you must be gentle when stepping on the accelerator. At this time, all the vehicles carried by the security personnel drove into the parking lot beside the entrance building. There are only 2 black Rolls-Royces left. The one in front is driven by Charlie, and the one in the back is another driver from the Gu family. The electric door below the gate opened to both sides, and the security personnel made a gesture of asking. Charlie stepped on the accelerator lightly and drove slowly into the gate building. When he drove the car into the winding road of Waiterest Mountain, he became more and more admired for the Feng Shui master who selected this treasure. There are countless mountains in the Yunshan Mountains, and he can find them among the thousands of mountains, and he is indeed quite capable. The 2 cars were winding upwards on the road, and Charlie no longer paid attention to Feng Shui. He could already see a large white marble mausoleum on the mountainside. There was the current ancestral grave of the Wade family. Soon, the Rolls-Royce he was driving went to the flat ground not far below the tomb. This is a specially opened parking lot. Several men in black suits are standing here. It seems they should be the security personnel of the graveyard. The larger the family, the more attention is paid to the safety of the ancestral grave. The top families can flourish and prosper, and the Feng Shui of the ancestral tomb must have played a considerable role, just like the ancient royal dragon veins, which is of great significance. If it is a foe or a competitor who has misconceptions and deliberately destroys his family's ancestral grave, the wealth will be lost, or the family will be destroyed. Therefore, there are as many as 100 security personnel deployed by the Wade family in Waiterest Mountain. In a year, the maintenance and security expenses of the ancestral grave alone will cost at least several hundred million. At this time, the security personnel guided Charlie, and after stopping the car in the designated parking space of the parking lot, Charlie immediately got out of the car and went to the back row to help Philip open the door. In the car behind, Lennon and Sarah also got out of the car. Afterwards, the driver of that car opened the trunk, and Lennon and Sarah carefully took out a few bunches of flowers from inside, beckoned to Charlie and said, "Teneria, come here, and help hold the flowers." Charlie knew this was the call for him, so he understood it, hurried to the front, and took 2 bouquets of flowers from the hands of the 2. Lennon took out 2 more bundles from inside, and she and Sarah each held 1. Philip also stepped forward at this time and said to Charlie, "Come on, Teneria, give me a bunch." Charlie hurriedly handed him one of them. Philip deliberately sighed at this time, rubbed the knee of his right leg, and said, "Some time ago, during chemotherapy, the knee of the right leg caused by the medicine seemed to be still a little uncomfortable. There are more than 100 steps, Teneria, just help me up." Charlie naturally nodded and agreed, "Okay, Chari Mongu." Philip said to the other driver, "Joss, just let Teneria help me over. You are waiting in the car." The driver nodded immediately, "Okay, master." At this moment, the security officer said with some embarrassment, "Mr. Gu, this does not meet Waitrist's regulations. According to the Wade family's regulations, only you, your wife, and the young lady can go up the mountain. Even we can't accompany you." "It's still troublesome, sir. He'll stay in the car and wait for you." The management of Waitrist's grave has always been extremely strict. According to the Wade family's regulations, in addition to immediate family members, collateral blood relatives who want to come to the ancestral tomb to worship must have the permission of the Wade family. The requirements for outsiders are even stricter. It must be a family or individual who has a deep connection with the Wade family to be allowed to enter. Like Philip, he and Changjing were like brothers. Therefore, their family of 3 will be approved to worship. But his entourage does not have the qualifications to approach Waitrist's graves. After all, just 3 words, not worthy. The Wade family buried here, whichever is placed outside, is a dragon and phoenix among the people, and who are the drivers, entourage, and assistant who are qualified to worship. Not to mention other people's servants, even the Wade family's servants and the Wade family's security here are not eligible to enter the tomb area. This area is cleaned and maintained 3 times in the morning, noon, and evening every day, and the person responsible for cleaning and maintenance is not the subordinates of the Wade family, but the collateral relatives of the Wade family. Of course, even if it is a collateral relative, it must be a talented person named Wade. Therefore, the security personnel stopped Charlie, naturally because of this. Philip saw that the other party was about to stop Charlie, and immediately said, "Young man, I have just recovered from a serious illness, and my body still has some sequelae. It is really inconvenient to move. Let my driver help me up. Your Waitrist graves were not so strict before." At that time, the entourage could also accompany in. The security personnel looked sorry, but said in a very firm tone, "I'm sorry, Mr. Gu, this is the new rule set by the family owner after the ancestral grave moved into Waitrist Mountain, and we must abide by it and never exceed it, so please forgive me." Philip suddenly became anxious. It was for Charlie to personally worship his parents, so he made a special trip to bring him here. Charlie didn't want to reveal his identity, so he could only pretend to be a driver, but what he didn't expect is that Waitrist's current management is so strict. He, the chairman of the Gu group, even put a pleading tone to the security personnel, saying, "Young man, I am indeed suffering from physical inconvenience. Please also look at the face of my relationship with the Wade family. Open up a side for me, you don't want to watch me roll down the stone steps without standing still, right?" Seeing this, the security personnel hurriedly bowed deeply. "Mr. Gu, there is really no way to accommodate this matter, otherwise, the job I have cannot be kept." Philip was a little annoyed, and questioned a bit angrily, "Your rules are too unreasonable, right? Our 2 are family friends, how can you make me look like an outsider?" The security staff said embarrassingly, "Mr. Gu, let's tell you that this rule is set by the old master, and the owner treats the old master's words as a standard, so we must strictly observe and not violate it. Please forgive me." Philip, angered and anxiously, blurted out, "Then this is not accommodating, right? Should I call Elder Wade now?" The security personnel nodded hurriedly and said, "Mr. Gu, you should call the owner of the house. If the owner allows, we will never stop him." Philip knew that he couldn't persuade the other party, so he sighed and said, "Yes, I will call Elder Wade." Although he said so, he had no bottom in his heart. He knew about the Wade family, and knew that the Wade family moved the ancestral tomb to Waderest Mountain because of an expert, and that expert should be the old master of the security staff. If it was the request made by the old master, I believe that the old master would never open any back door to him for his own feng shui. Could it be that Charlie could not be allowed to worship his parents in person today? He has been separated from his parents for 18 years. Charlie was also anxious at this time. In fact, since he got the 9 Profound Sky Classics, he hasn't felt this panic and eagerness for a long time. His parents were buried in one of the Cardin mausoleums not far away. As long as they stepped up to more than 100 stone steps, they could go to the parents' graves to pay homage, fulfilling the biggest dream of 18 years. However, if these people don't let him go, can't go all the way, right? Or, does he have to identify myself from the Wade family? However, although he can make himself honorable to worship parents in that way, after that is the real trouble. At this moment, a loud voice sounded, "Let him go." Everyone followed the prestige, only to see an old master with an old-fashioned, completely white hair, beard and eyebrows, walking slowly over with a cane. When Charlie saw this person, he felt that he should be 100 years old. Although he was very old, his walking posture was surprisingly stable with the help of crutches. It is the 12th lunar month of winter. The old master is only wearing a white tailored suit, but he can't see that he is half cold. And his crutches seem to be a bit different. Charlie has seen many old people's walking sticks, with dragon heads carved on the top, but there is a python carved on his walking stick. After taking a few glances at the other party, Charlie couldn't help but wondered in his heart, could it be that Uncle said this person, the old Chinese feng shui master invited by the Wade family from the United States? Later, he couldn't help thinking, why did he agree to let me go up? Could it be that he saw through my identity? Is his insight so strong? Or is there any other way he can figure out my identity? Just when he couldn't think of the whole story, the person in charge of security asked in surprise, "Old master, don't you mean that outsiders are not allowed to go up except Wade family's best friend?" The old master smiled slightly, looked at Charlie and said, "He is not an outsider." The security staff was even more puzzled. "Old master, what do you mean? Why don't I understand?" The old master smiled and said, "I think this person should have a deep connection with the Wade family in his previous life, so he's not an outsider. Let him go up." Have a relationship in the previous life? The security personnel were naturally a little unbelieving, but the thought of feng shui was very mysterious at first. Maybe this thing might be true. "So," he said embarrassingly, "Old Master Patriarch meant?" The old master replied, "Have your patriarch said that as long as I am on this day, I will have the final say here?" The security personnel hurriedly and respectfully said, "The owner did say that." The old master asked again, "Then your patriarch has said that even if I ask you to tear down Waderest's tomb, you must not disobey?" The security staff is more respectful. The owner did say it. The old master nodded and asked, "Then I let him go up. Do you have any comments?" The security staff took a step back subconsciously and respectfully said, "Going back to the old master, I have no opinion. Everything is subject to your opinion." The old master nodded in satisfaction, and then made a gesture of inviting Charlie, saying, "Gentlemen, please." Charlie was very puzzled. He didn't quite understand why the old master seemed to have spotted him at a glance. However, since the old master helped him solve the current problem, the most important thing for him is to go and worship his parents first. The rest can be said later. So he arched his hand at the old master and said, "Master, thank you." After speaking, he assisted Philip pretendingly, and together with Lennon and Sarah, they stepped up the stone steps. No one else followed, including the old master, who was also standing quietly below, looking at Charlie's background, desperately restraining the excitement in his heart. The tomb of the Wade family is divided into 9 rows. The top row is the first ancestor of the Wade family who left a grave. The lower you go, the lower your seniority. Charlie's parents were buried in the penultimate row. In this row, there are a total of 20 graves of the same size, but only one grave has a tombstone in front of it. Philip stopped in this row, pointed to the only tombstone in this row, and said to Charlie, "Charlie, that is your parents' tomb." Charlie nodded lightly and murmured, "In the Wade family's generation, only my parents have passed away. The others should still be alive, right?" Philip said, "Yes, even though this generation is in their 40s or 50s, they are in their 40s and 50s in their prime of life. If your parents were not harmed by others, they should be the mainstay of the Wade family now." Charlie sighed and walked inward. Those security guards, as well as the old master, were all below, so they couldn't see the situation here either. Charlie stopped pretending, and Philip stepped in first. When he came to his parents' grave, took off his sunglasses and mask, and looked at the photos and names of his parents on the tombstone. The tears couldn't stop instantly, and kept streaming down his face. In his mind, it seemed that another movie was playing at a very fast speed. This movie chronicles itself from the moment he remembered it and lasted until he was 8 years old. Then, he used a faster speed in his mind to flash his own life for more than 10 years in fragments. The 18 years without parents have been long and difficult, and full of bitterness and pain that ordinary people can't understand. At this moment, he had countless words in his heart that wanted to confide to his deceased parents, but when the words reached his mouth, he felt like a block in his throat, and he couldn't say a word. After crying for a moment in front of the tombstone, Charlie knelt on the ground with a thud, holding flowers in both hands, and placing them respectfully in front of the tombstone, choked up and said, "Dad, Mom, your son is not filial. You have been here for 18 years before your son came to see you. All these years, your son has been trapped and overwhelmed. I have not been able to pay homage. Please forgive me." After speaking, he leaned down and knocked 9 heads in front of the tombstone. People say that they kneel down to the sky, kneel down to the ground, and kneel down to parents in the middle, but in Charlie's eyes, the sky and the earth are not worth kneeling. In the world, only parents are worth kneeling down for. Philip also stepped forward at this time, knelt on one knee in front of the tombstone, and sighed, "Big brother and sister-in-law, I promised you for 18 years. After all, your brother did not break his promise and finally brought Charlie back. Look at him. Now already a talented person. He's almost exactly the same as eldest brother, and is also a dragon and phoenix." As he said, he wiped a tear and continued, "Last time I came to see you, I said I would come down and meet you soon, but I didn't expect that Charlie saved my life, and the older brother and sister-in-law may have to work hard for me. Wait for me for a while." Speaking of this, Philip was in tears. Lennon stepped forward, also knelt down beside Philip on one knee, choked up and said, "Big brother, sister-in-law, thank you for being in heaven, bless Philip to survive the catastrophe, the Wade family's kindness to Gu family, we will never forget it in this life." Sarah knelt on her knees beside Charlie, did not say a word, just cried silently next to him. After kneeling on the ground for a long time, Charlie wiped away his tears, and gently wiped his parents' tombstones with his sleeves several times, saying, "Dad, Mom, your son can't stay with you for too long this time, but please don't worry. I will definitely come to see you every year." After that, he sighed, helped Philip beside him, and said, "Uncle, let's go." Philip nodded slightly and pulled his wife to stand up. Charlie put on his sunglasses and masks again, and walked down slowly with the family of 3. Below the stone steps, a few security guards were still standing straight. And the old master, holding the python head crutch with both hands, looked at Charlie with a little awe in his eyes. Charlie didn't speak, but walked to the old master and bowed deeply. The old master hurriedly threw away the crutches to help, and said with sincerity and trepidation, "You can't make it, you can't make it." Several security personnel were a little surprised. When the patriarch of the Wade family bowed to the old master didn't blink. Why did the driver bow to him, so he was so polite? At this time, the old master opened his mouth and asked Charlie, "Young man, I wonder if I can take a step to speak?" Charlie nodded, "No problem." The old man turned to the security guards and said, "No one is allowed to follow." Everyone nodded hurriedly. Charlie nodded to Philip, and walked to the other side of the mountainside with the old master. Here, there is a platform paved with natural marble, next to the mountain. Charlie always felt that the entire Waderest mountain had a soaring momentum. After seeing this huge and flat platform, he suddenly realized that the center of the entire Feng Shui Bureau was here. The old master took him to stand in the center of this platform, and respectfully said, "The entire Waderest Mountain and the entire Feng Shui array in Waderest Mountain are actually set up for you." Charlie asked in surprise, "Set for me? Don't know what the old master means? Do you know me?" The old master said, 4 years ago, something happened to the Wade family, and the entire Wade family was trapped in the Dragon Shoal and couldn't get out of it. At that time, it was when you got married." "Getting married?" Charlie exclaimed, "When I got married?" "Yes." The old master nodded, and said, "This dragon is talking about you." Charlie frowned and asked, "Does that mean I'm trapped in a talk?" "Yes." The old master said respectfully, "You are the only dragon in the Wade family." "What is a dragon?" "The top is in the sky, and the bottom is in the sea, but you have become a home by the river. This is the dragon. Sleepy Shoals. And if you are trapped in the shoal, the entire Wade family's fortune will be exhausted. At that time, your grandfather was suffering from a serious illness and was unable to treat it because of this situation. After speaking, the old master said again, so, your grandpa found me. And I, 3 months before your grandfather found me, just gave him a divination. The hexagram image of that hexagram is a dead end. It means that my life may be exhausted within a few years. I was already 100 or 2 at that time. It doesn't matter if I die. It's just that in the dead end, it happened to be revealed to me. A sect, all hexagrams in this sect, point to the east. I didn't understand what I'm referring to. I've been looking for more clues. At this time, your grandpa came and asked me to come back to China to watch Feng Shui for Wade's family. Only then did I understand that the dead life was in the eastern motherland, at Wade's house. When I came to Eastcliff, I looked through all the Feng Shui clues for the Wade family. After a few hangs, I figured out that the Wade family has a dragon and is trapped in the shallows. If this dragon can't fly into the sky, not only the Wade family will be finished. There will be no trace of the path of life I set aside. Therefore, I spent 4 years searching and rebuilding Waderest Mountain. Last spring, I broke the predicament of Wade's dragon shoal, so you were able to get out of trouble. When Charlie heard this, his heart was shocked. Could it be that what he said to get him out of trouble was to get the 9 profound heavenly scriptures? Because at this time last spring, I was completely in line with my own 9 profound heavenly secrets. Thinking of this, Charlie sighed the old master's proficiency in Feng Shui divination, while worried, did he know the existence of the 9 profound sky classics? This is one's deepest and deepest secret, and even the closest person can never tell it. Therefore, he deliberately asked the old master, "Old gentleman, you said that by rebuilding Waderest Mountain, I was able to get out of trouble. What do you mean by that? How can I get out of trouble? How can I get out of trouble like that?" The old master shook his head. This hexagram is not something I can fully understand. I can only calculate that you are out of trouble now, and you are going to soar into the sky. After you get out of trouble, you will also bring me. I have continued my 10 years of life, so I have not left, staying here waiting for you, but I can't figure out what this life is. Charlie was even more surprised. The so-called life of the old master, could it be the extra rejuvenation pills on his body? This time in Eastcliff, Charlie did bring more than 1 rejuvenation pill. Although he was sure that a single rejuvenating pill could heal Philip, he still brought 2 or 3 extra pills to be on the safe side, just in case. From this point of view, among the hexagrams that the old master gave him for divination, the only life left in the dead is the rejuvenation pill on his body. At the same time, he couldn't help but figure out what the old master said just now. It seemed that when he married Claire in Oris Hill, the dilemma of Dragon Shoal had already formed. The old master said just now that the reason why he was trapped in the shallows was because he became a home on the river bank. Oris Hill was originally located on the bank of the Yangtze River, which corresponds to it. Moreover, his fate has been rough, and it was not until the sudden appearance of Stephen last spring that it brought him a turning point. However, the biggest opportunity in life was not to be found again by the Wade family, but to get the 9 profound heavenly scriptures by chance. That time also happened to be last spring. From this it can be seen that the cause and effect of the whole thing were first of all that he was trapped in the shallows, so that the whole Wade family was also unlucky. Then, the Wade family found the old master and tried to ask him to help solve the trouble. The old master made a divination for himself and saw that the East had an opportunity to increase his 10-year life, so he returned to the motherland not far away to solve the difficulties for the Wade family, and at the same time waited for his chance. It took him 4 years to find Waderest Mountain and set up a feng shui array on this mountain to break through the situation of his own dragon shoal. The Wade family survived the crisis and he benefited a lot. And he has been waiting for his appearance, because he is the student in his hexagram. Thinking of this, Charlie bowed slightly to the old master. "Old sir, the younger generation really benefited a lot from all your hard work. Please be respected by the younger generation." The old master hurriedly stepped forward to stop him, and said in a very humble manner, "How can you do this? I dare not accept such a gift from you." Charlie insisted, "It should be. If it weren't for you, I might still be trapped in the shallows." The old master shook his head. "In human fate, dragon is the supreme existence, so the dragon shoal is a predicament, not a dead end. The shoal can trap the dragon, but it can't kill the dragon. Therefore, the predicament when it will be cracked, it is only a matter of time. If I didn't come to break this round, there would be others who would break this round." Speaking of this, he said with great emotion, "God knows good and evil, and the way of heaven is reincarnation. No matter who breaks your predicament, it is a great contribution, and the way of heaven will certainly give him enough in return." Afterwards, the old master looked at Charlie and said with a slight smile, "The hexagram says, if I help you get out of trouble, you will have a 10-year life. Maybe in the 10 years, the judge is already in the book of life and death. So, thank you again." Charlie smiled slightly and said to the old master, "Master, I believe in geomantic omen, fate and heaven, but I don't believe in ghosts and gods. In this world, there will be no Lord Yan, and there will be no life and death books." The old master nodded non-committal, and smiled, "Hey, the mystery of heaven is not something I can fully understand. To be honest, I still don't know where the students in the hexagrams are." Charlie nodded, took out a rejuvenating pill from the pocket inside his jacket, handed it to him, and said, "Old master, this should be your lifeblood." The old master trembled all over, looking at Charlie as if struck by lightning, then looked at the rejuvenating pill in his hand, and exclaimed, "This, is this?" Charlie said earnestly, "You helped me, I will naturally help you too. If you take this medicine, it will increase your longevity by 10 years. It shouldn't be a problem." Although the old master didn't know what rejuvenation pill was, he still nodded in excitement. Immediately after losing his crutches, he knelt on the ground tremblingly, raising his hands above his head. Charlie put the rejuvenating pill in his hands, then helped him up and said, "Old master, take it now. At your age, you should not see any effect from the outside after taking it, but the real effect, a person with great wisdom like you should be able to feel it." The old master was very grateful and blurted out, "Thank you, master." After that, he no longer hesitated and put the rejuvenating pill in his mouth. After that, the old master closed his eyes motionlessly for about a minute. A minute later, he opened his eyes, looked at Charlie with tears in his eyes, knelt down again, and choked up in his mouth, "Master, this medicine is really a magical medicine. Thank you for your help." Charlie said hurriedly, "Old master, you are an elder, why should you be so polite?" The old master said seriously, "In terms of fate, you are dragon and I am python. Whenever the python sees a dragon, I must bow my head. Even if it is a python that has been doing things for 1,000 years, must bow down when encountering a newly born young dragon. Just now there are too many people around, your identity howled have leaked, and could not salute you immediately. I hope you can forgive me." Charlie smiled and waved his hand, "These are just some statements, you don't have to care about it like this." The old master said very solemnly, "The more you believe in fate, the more you must follow the way of heaven and act in harmony with the sky. If I see you and not worship, it will be disrespectful. If there is such a thing, the way of heaven will remember me." Seeing the old master's resolute attitude, Charlie no longer insisted, but asked, "Old gentleman, the younger generation still doesn't know your name. Is it convenient to disclose it?" The old master immediately arched his hands and said with respect, "Charlie, whose surname is Lai, is named Lai King Hua. He is a direct descendant of Lai Bai, a master of Feng Shui in the Song dynasty." Charlie suddenly realized, admiringly said, unexpectedly, "After the old gentleman is from a famous sect, no wonder you have such a profound knowledge of this matter." With that, Charlie couldn't help thinking of the fake Feng Shui master who deceived Warnya back then. He also claimed to be a descendant of Lai Bai, but he had no real skills. However, the old master in front of him can master the art of divination. Even as far away as the United States, he can infer so many key issues. He is indeed a rare master. Thinking of this, Charlie asked again, "Old master, why had you settled in the United States?" Lai King Hua smiled bitterly and said, "During the War of Resistance, my father was concerned about the motherland and had the greatest divination in his life. Although he calculated that China would never vanish, he also calculated that the Lai family would be destroyed, so he took his own at the expense of life. Breaking the game saved the lives of other people in our family, but the premise is that our family must travel across oceans. So in 1938, I buried my father, took my mother, younger siblings, and moved to the United States. Then I set up a family and started a business there. Later I thought about moving my family back. But because I had lived there for many years, my family and career, chances, grievances are all involved, and couldn't afford to toss, so I settled there." Charlie nodded and asked him, "Then what are your plans next?" Lai King Hua looked at the thousands of mountains, and said with a smile, "The descendants are all in the United States. I have been out for 4 years this time. They are so concerned. Since I have already gotten the opportunity of 10 years of life from you, I think about sealing it up. Go back and live there." Hearing that the old master was going back to the United States to take care of his life, Charlie arched his hands at him and said with a smile, "In this case, the juniors wish you happiness and health for the rest of your life." Lai King Hua replied in a busy manner, and said flatteredly, "I would like to thank Master for your blessing." After that, Lai King Hua hesitated for a moment and said, "Master, I have a piece of advice, I hope you can listen to it." Charlie said immediately, "Old gentleman, please say, the younger generation listens very carefully. Lai Qinghua said, although your problem of the dragon shoal has been broken, you should not stay on the riverside to talk. Charlie asked, then where do you think I should go? Lai Qinghua said respectfully, I think you should come to Eastcliff, because this is the capital of the country. From the perspective of the city's feng shui fate, this is the city with the highest fate in the country. You come back here from as far as feng shui is concerned, it is the dragon entering the sea. Charlie smiled slightly, thank you for your suggestion, I will consider it seriously. Lai Qinghua nodded, as if he could see Charlie's thoughts, and said seriously, Master, it is said in Zheng Guangxian Wen that you must be cautious and the first one is not to deceive yourself. First of all, don't deceive your own heart. No matter what you say next, you should listen to everything, and you must be loyal to your original heart. Charlie nodded, Master mentioned something, the junior has been taught. Lai Qinghua hurriedly waved his hand and said, don't dare to be master. I will have a fate with you next time. Don't know if there will be a chance to meet again in the future. If you need it, I can count it for you. Charlie subconsciously wanted to agree, but after thinking for a moment, he shook his head and said, Old sir, you don't need to forget about the hexagrams. I have a temperament axis, and my destiny makes me go east. I might want to go west. Heavenly secret, on the contrary, I might do something against my intentions. Let me go on slowly. Lai Qinghua was shocked. Over the years, as a top-level master, he has been madly sought after by countless people, and countless people have come to him at all costs, count them, and give directions. But even so, there are still many people who have no chance to make themselves count. But it was the first time that he saw someone like Charlie, and he didn't even have the heart to spy on the future, fortune, and heaven. It was really rare to see. In shock, he couldn't help but admire Charlie a little bit more. So, he bowed to Charlie and said, Master, met by chance. Charlie smiled and nodded, and said, Old gentleman, have a good journey. When they returned to the parking lot, everyone looked suspiciously at the two of them. They didn't understand what they talk about, the old and the young, who had been talking for so long. Lai Qinghua knew that Charlie did not want to reveal his identity, so he directly said to the person in charge of waiterist security, Thank you for getting me a car. I will pack my luggage and send me to the airport. The man asked in surprise, Old master, are you leaving now? Lai Qinghua nodded and smiled, It has been 4 years. My promise to your patriarch has been fulfilled, and it's time to go back. The man said hurriedly and respectfully, Old master, don't you go to the Wade family to meet the patriarch? Or I will inform the patriarch and let him come to see you. The person in charge of the security knows very well that the Wade family's old master respects this old master very much. Charlie's grandfather is 70 years old this year, and Lai Qinghua is already a centenarian with a generation difference in age, so Charlie's grandfather has always called him as a senior and respected him. When the old master brought Lai Qinghua back from abroad, he arranged for him to live in the Wade family mansion, and he was even more meticulously served on weekdays. However, after Waderist Mountain was built, Lai Qinghua had to move out of the Wade family and live here. The patriarch is too embarrassed to let the old master live in the tomb of Waderist. Even if Waiterest Mountain is very well built, there is an area dedicated to office and living for the staff, but the old master still feels that Lai Qinghua cannot condescend to live here. However, Lai Qinghua insisted on moving over even though he tried to stay. Because he has been waiting for his chance, waiting for the life gate in his hexagram to open, waiting for Charlie to appear, and give him the rejuvenation pill that can extend his life for 10 years. Now, the fruit of staying for 4 years has arrived, and it is time to go. Therefore, he said to the person in charge, "Thank you, tell Patriarch that what Lai promised him, and he has done it. Moreover, Lai has been away for too long and is homesick, so he will not say goodbye to him. Bye." After all, he arched his hands at everyone, and when he looked at Charlie, he paused for a moment, his eyes full of gratitude. Afterwards, he turned and raised his head and laughed loudly, and exclaimed in a puff of air, "Laugh to the sky and go out, I am a Penggao native." After saying this, he stepped out. Philip couldn't help sighing, the centenarians still have this kind of courage, it's really extraordinary. Charlie smiled on the side, and while the Wade family security personnel were chasing Lai Qinghua away, he said to Philip, "Uncle, let's go back too." "Okay." Philip nodded and said, "Go back, come back next time." Charlie will continue to play the role of the driver, so he opened the door for Philip, and after Philip in the car, he got into the Rolls-Royce cab again. Started the car. As soon as Charlie drove the car out of the parking lot, Philip in the back row asked him, "Charlie, what did the old teacher talk to you just now? I think he seems to respect you very much." Charlie smiled faintly and said, "The old master recognized me and knew that I was the Wade family blood, so he gave me some advice." Philip asked in surprise, "How can he recognize you? He knows you?" Charlie shook his head, "Don't know him, but he is a descendant of the Lai family after all. He is still very accomplished in Feng Shui and Xiangshu. Maybe I will come if I get it right." Philip couldn't help sighing, "No wonder the Wade family refused to let you go up the mountain, but he said that you are not an outsider." That was what he meant. After speaking, Philip asked again, "This Feng Shui technique is so magical? Who knows when it will come?" Charlie smiled and said, "Maybe, although the things of the ancestors are ancient, but I have to admit, they are also very intelligent, and even include great wisdom that we don't understand. Just like the Mayans, in such an ancient period, they almost created the complete calendar which was calculated right, and it looks incredible to us modern people." Philip nodded seriously, then remembered something, and asked Charlie, "Charlie, what are your plans next?" Charlie said, "Tomorrow, a friend's grandmother will have her birthday. I will send some gifts. After attending the birthday banquet, I will return to Oris Hill." Philip hurriedly said, "What are you doing in such a hurry? It's not too late to live for a few more days before leaving." Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates, link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.